Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. Nobody becomes an icon by staying comfortable. These are the moments that stretch them and shape them. Real stories, real strategies, real leadership. The titles are public. The turning points were private. Until now.
I'm Heather Cole, finance leader, executive coach, and proud member of FEI. My goal is simple. Take the stories behind the titles and turn them into lessons you can use. If you've ever looked successful on paper but felt the weight of, am I doing this right? You're in the right place. Stories, strategy, leadership. Let's get into it. Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. I'm Heather Cole, and today's guest is Catherine Hoovel, former Senior Vice President, Chief Accounting Officer, and Controller at McDonald's Corporation, where she spent nearly 3 decades rising from staff accountant to the top of the accounting function. In this episode, Catherine shares the career move that changed everything. The moment she stopped focusing on the next rung in the career ladder and started articulating what she wanted long-term, and then built a plan that could flex as detours showed up. We also get real about the future of finance and how AI will shift early career development, why leaders need to rethink entry level, and what can't be automated: critical thinking, context, and human connection. And if you're anywhere near the retirement decision, Catherine lays out a practical way to design your next chapter with intention without losing your sense of purpose. So let's get into it. Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. And with me today is Catherine Hoovel. She is the former Chief Accounting Officer at McDonald's Corporation, and she's actually somewhat recently transitioned to a new role in life. And Catherine, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Heather. I'm really excited to be here too. Icons holds kind of a special place in my heart when I think about how I give back in terms of my professional career. So Catherine Hoovel, as Heather said, long career at McDonald's, about 29 years there. Started as a staff accountant and retired as VP, Chief Accounting Officer, and Controller. Quite the journey, and hopefully able to share a little bit of insights on my career and what I'm doing kind of next in this next phase of life.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations. That's an amazing journey at the same company, right? Especially today, you see people moving around a lot. I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Mm-hmm.
What's one lesson maybe that you can share, especially for some of our younger listeners, something maybe you overcame that you're really proud of?
I think the one kind of nuggeted advice that I can give, and I give this to a couple of my children who are also kind of, early in their professional careers now. I feel like my career took a different trajectory when I was able to actually articulate what I wanted to do from an aspirational perspective. I think when I was sitting at a manager level, for a while, all I could think about was the next manager level, or what does that director role look like? When I was able to actually look out and see at that point who was our assistant controller and say, someday I want to be a VP and I would really like your role. Whether that role was going to exist in the years it was going to take me to get there, maybe not, but it at least created then a development plan for me and the next role and the role after that, serving in purpose for what that long-term aspirational role might be. Not going to say I didn't take detours along the way. If there's another piece of advice, I think, is let those detours come, that get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is a huge cliche, I will say, to throw out there. But I think I was an accountant, a CPA, public accounting, very much the prototype for what a chief accounting officer, might look like early in their career. But I also took a business unit CFO role. I took a head of FP&A role. I oversaw global tax and global business services. All kind of things that probably weren't on that, hey, if I just want to go from being a manager in financial reporting to being a chief accounting officer and was going to be just that kind of head accountant in an organization, that career path might have looked a little different. The being, comfortable being uncomfortable and wanting to take on some of those roles where I had zero training. I hadn't taken a tax class since I was in college, but the amount I learned, the interesting people I got to work with, being a business unit CFO and reporting directly to a head of a business unit and not having a finance boss was some of the most rewarding experiences I had, and kind of let those come and don't be afraid to take them, I think are other bits of advice I would give.
I love that. And that seems to be a common theme around among the women that I've been interviewing for the Icons podcast. But you said something there that I want to back up just a little bit, because you said a nugget that I know when I was younger in my career, I was horrible at. And that is that you asked. Like, maybe you can kind of unpack that a little. What I'm hearing you say is you set your aspiration, you figured out what you want to be when you grow up, and you kind of went back and said, I want to be this. How do I get there? Was there fear in that asking? Was that comfortable for you?
I think the asking part was comfortable. Grew up in an organization that transparently is very, open doors. There are no closed offices in the McDonald's world. It's a very kind of open and transparent culture. But I think where I was uncomfortable and struggled was, what do I want to do? It's really hard to, few years into your career, think about where is the next 5 and even 10 years going to take me. And I think the advice is it can change. So it's okay to say on that date, I want to do X, and maybe it'll work out perfectly and you'll have a career path that'll just step you up with all the right experiences into that role. But maybe you're going to get tapped on the shoulder to do something different, and it might open up different doors and new avenues. So I think don't be afraid to put a stake in the ground, because it's not a metal stake. How's that? It's a plastic stake, and it might bend a little bit and ebb and flow as you go through that career journey.
Yeah, I like to say that, you mentioned earlier detours, welcome the detours, right?
Yeah.
I like to think that sometimes in your career you hit a roundabout, and sometimes you may actually be in that circle for a week. Have you ever seen the drivers where they get in the roundabout and they like
Yes.
don't know where they're going?
Yes. You don't have to laminate that development plan, right? It should be a living, breathing document that is going to change. And to your point, I have seen people that have been peers of mine or reported to me were based on whether they loved what they were doing. It was, something in their personal life was not allowing them to kind of take a new challenge or a new role at any given time. As long as you're still like being challenged and growing and loving what you do, even if you're on that roundabout for a little bit longer than you maybe thought, who cares?
Yeah.
It's gotta be self-fulfilling and self-rewarding, as well as beneficial to maybe the business as well.
Yeah. So when you say, be like curious and keep growing and learning, right? I love that because I think it's even more applicable today than, I don't know about you, but I get overwhelmed at times at the speed
Yes.
of which like AI and all of this is coming in. Like, if you were to give your daughters, let's say they wanted to come into accounting, or your nieces, what advice would you give them with the AI variable?
And I don't know if this is advice, but it's like, God bless you, you're gonna have way more fun in your career than probably I did. I spent, and I'm sure a lot of financial people listening to this could relate, a lot of my career trying to get to data, right? And not a lot of time getting to think about how am I going to use that data to advise and influence the business on, growth, performance, et cetera. Like, the insights were so hard to get to because you spent 90% of your time working through how do I get good data. I think it's going to be like extremely more rewarding and feeling more valued in your career, being able to kind of just know the data is there, know the data is good, and actually use your critical thinking and strategic problem solving skills way earlier than I was able to use them in my career.
Yeah.
And I think that is exciting and kind of wish in a small way I could go back and do it over and not have to do 14 column cash flow, statements by hand. But I do think there's kind of an excitement about it where I sometimes take a pause when I talk to current leaders today, peers of mine, is how are we going to train future leaders though? Right? How, when you don't have the stumbles or the roadblocks or the sniffing out, this is bad data versus good data. And I'm a little worried from like a talent and teamwork perspective on, how is business going to think about and is a business and financial leaders thinking hard enough about talent and teamwork in the AI age?
Well, I think that's such a valid point that as leaders, we better be like
Yeah,
thinking about, right? So we look at AI and automation and how, especially from an accounting perspective, it can do a lot of the stuff that we had to do more manually, right?
yep,
And so there's that. But at the same time, I'm hearing rumors throughout the industry of the fact that because of AI's ability to do that, they're not bringing on as many, let's say, interns or
yep,
to learn the way we learned. And so it's kind of cutting jobs in at that tier. But you're right. Ultimately, there's going to be a gap,
correct.
right? We're going to have people that didn't, they don't really understand it, right? Until you do it.
Do it. Yeah. I think it's possible. The question is, do you just need to redefine what an entry level role looks like? Does an entry level role look more like a manager or supervisor role looked like in our day and age? And then how do you redesign the training and the upskilling so that it's not about, hey, you're going to learn how to go dig into all these systems and then you're going to prepare these reports by hand and then you're going to analyze them with just your brain and a pencil and your Excel tools. But how are you going to train more on the business maybe early on, the industry you're in, the what does good look like, the KPIs that drive results and all of those things that you probably learned a little later and got kind of along the journey as opposed to now how are you going to teach your entry level, I did quote unquote there, how are you going to teach your entry level employees to be at that? I think it's a redefinition of what entry level looks like.
Yeah.
And the problem is we probably got a lot of people like you and I sitting in leadership roles where we got to, they got to think differently and
Mhm.
start to create that training and talent development model that matches what's going on in the world. And that's, I think, my take. I've seen it with my, a couple of my kids just, yeah, there aren't as many entry level roles out there, and they're having to think differently about how they get their foot in the door and what type of jobs they take kind of right out of school.
And I think the skill set of learning to think, right? To
Yes.
problem solve, because AI is fabulous and it will automate stuff. But when it breaks.
Yeah.
And, you and I have come up the ranks and we know how to kind of go backwards and say, okay,
Yep.
where did this problem occur? But that is potentially a gap. Now, along those same lines of AI, AI to me is speeding everything up. Like,
Mhm.
whatever direction you're going, whether it's the direction you think you're going or not, it will get you there faster.
Yes.
And I think that it also exposes the fractures, the where we might not be as solid as we think we are.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, and in the future of like AI's, it's going to be a lot.
It's gonna be a lot, and, I've started to use it a little bit in some consulting work that I'm doing, and even in a simple application, like trying to come up with a standard operating procedure for, let's say, a client kickoff meeting, right? Like, I want
Yep.
a client kickoff agenda for this type of engagement. I mean, it'll kick it out in 2 minutes that you might have spent, 2 hours thinking about. But what I find is that it still needs someone to say, okay, based on the client, the industry, what I already know about them from, my statement of work, is this asking the right questions? Is this setting the right agenda? And so although it is faster, I still think that critical thinking, that problem solving, that, okay, it gave me something. If I just go use that with everybody, I'm not going to come across in the manner in which I want to come across. Again, right before I retired, we were just starting to dabble in it from a McDonald's finance space in different ways. What I could see happening is it does an analysis for you. I want to look at a list of this balance sheet accounts, their reconciliations, and have they been, how many are overdue, how many still have outstanding items. Just let's say you just wanted kind of a state of the union or state of the business. Just taking what comes out without actually putting some, "Hey, I work in this industry, I work in this business. I've been here for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years," and kind of showing up as a person with a personal element to that, in terms of what you know. If without that, I feel like for all its great efficiency plays, AI is going to kinda take away the personal element, the connection to, what do I know about my business? What do I know about my department or my role? And I worry for us as humans if that goes away, to be
So,
perfectly honest.
do you think that maybe I always look at there's two sides to every coin, right?
Yep.
And so as I look at AI, and I absolutely agree with you, what it's taking is it's taking away the human side of humanity.
Correct.
So if we look at that, one of the things we've been experimenting with the CFOs I coach, CEOs I coach, and my own team is teaching the AI kind of about us, like creating our
Yep.
clones, so to speak, so that it allows to add like the Heather back in Heather eyes, right? Like add your spirit back in so that you can still, as you said, it can help me. For those of us that are challenged with words or numbers people, it makes me sound way better,
Correct.
right? It's a godsend for that. But at the same time, you want your flavor, your humor, your wisdom, right?
Yeah,
I think maybe that's where the opportunity lies.
it does, I think.
If people learn how to really leverage it, but keep it you.
Yeah. Having stepped away from a career, there's one thing I miss. It's the people and the fun we had along the way, right? I really would be scared for a world that doesn't have that anymore, right? Doesn't have that human connection, the ability to laugh and have fun on the job. Yeah.
So can we unpack that a little bit? Because you are somewhat recently retired after a very long, successful career. And there's a lot of people in the FEI community that are kind of that age where like, yeah, I could retire, I could do one more CFO stint, or I could do, you know what I mean? Where they're kind of
Yep.
wavering. Maybe you can help us unpack, like, I guess there's two avenues of this. And we'll start with the avenue of when you decided to retire,
Hmm.
like getting things, the baton prepped to hand off
Yeah.
and leaving your legacy.
I was probably fortunate that I had about, probably, was it probably 6 to 8 months post announcing I was retiring before I actually walked out the door. A great luxury to have. It could have been probably as short as 4 months based on our retirement rules, but chose to stay and help out. And I think that was a little bit of what my plan was before I even kind of talked to my CFO about, hey, I think it's time for me to kind of do the next thing in my life. Is that I was really kind of preparing that it could be longer than the minimum time frame, because I really did wanna set my team up for success. I loved my team. I had a great team. They were doing great things. We were also mid-finance transformation, so there was a lot just on everyone's plates, and the added, I'll say, strain of boss turnover was probably the last thing I wanted to put on my team in the middle of trying to also implement new systems and transform our finance processes. That allowed me to actually bring on kind of my replacement. And we spent probably 3 months where for a month we did everything together. For another month, I allowed her to take over some aspects of the role and I kept some. And then by kind of month 3, I'm just here if you need me. I kept meeting with my team throughout that, what's working with the person's new style, new ideas, what's not working, allowing myself to be a bit of a buffer to
Hmm.
take some of that feedback back to my replacement. And I do a lot of like listening sessions. It's something I've done throughout my career at all levels. So I always felt it valuable to hear something from everyone in the organization. So periodically, probably once a year, I'd send an email out and say, There's no obligation, but anyone who wants to meet for half hour, here's my calendar, set up time. I just want to know what's working in the department and, area where you see opportunities for improvement and a little bit if you were like queen for a day, what would be one of the things you would want us to address or change? I won't say that action always came out of every single one of those conversations. And many people didn't take me up on it or didn't take me up on it every year that I did it. But I used that as part of that exit strategy as well, is kind of listening on what are you nervous about? What are you concerned about with new leadership? And making sure just a lot of the folks that worked under me, I was also very fortunate to have mentored them and put them in place. And so I felt fairly confident that because of that, the legacy from a talent and a people practices stuff, we're probably going to continue in my absence.
So I love that idea. You call it your listening session where you're like,
Hmm.
hey, bring the good, the bad, the ugly, right?
Yep.
Like, bring your ideas. I'm kind of curious. Like, if you had to look back at the people that took you up on that, were those the people that grew faster in your organization? Because I just have this hypothesis in my head that the people that are like, "Hey, Catherine, I'd like to meet with you," are probably the ones that are a little bit more go getters, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably didn't hold across the board, but probably more than not, yes, they were the ones that were also always coming up with something new about how to make their job more efficient or questioning something we've been doing for so many years and does it still need to be done or could it be done in a different manner? And then those are the people that obviously stick in your mind a little bit when,
Hmm.
hey, we need a new supervisor over here, or this manager's leaving and who might be ready for that role. Those people who were kind of not only vocal, but also kind of showed action in terms of their own desk and their own job were usually ones that would rise to the tops of those lists.
Yeah, I like that because I hear from CFOs all the time. How do I get my people to step up, like to step up to their next level? And I love the idea of these listening sessions and just kind of like, hey, let's see who shows up,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
I'd like to take a minute and go kind of to the other side of the retirement.
Sure.
And that is, I'm just anticipating when I retire that my ego, my need to be like kind of not in charge, but you know what I mean. Like, was that hard for you? Was that easy for you?
I'll say it's been a journey, and I will say, yes, at moments along the way, it's been hard. You go from being successful in your career, being uber busy, and that feeling of people, whether it's your team or your boss, calling you, texting you, emailing you, feeling that like I'm the only one that can kind of solve these problems. So stepping away from that is hard. I also, though, feel like being in stressful leadership roles, the decompressing for a few months is really healthy and I would say highly advised. The best advice I got, and I think it answers your question a little bit in terms of not only just like, does your ego take a hit, but how do you find like what the purpose is for the next phase, which prevents your ego from kind of taking a hit.
Exactly.
So, probably the 2 best pieces of advice. One was don't do anything for 6 months. Take 6 months off, and yes, there may be some people coming at you with, "Hey, would you consider this? Do you wanna do that?" Take some time to think and organize your thoughts and see what you feel like when you're well rested. And maybe getting to the gym more than, 1 day a week and those type of things. But the other thing, this came from one of our McDonald board members, and she was great from an advice perspective. When I was kind of talking about retirement, she's kind of in her second career. And I asked her, like, how did you even make the decision to go do what you're doing now? Because it's so different from, what your first phase was. And she's like, well, I came up with kind of the three criteria I was going to put everything that came at me through. And I'm not going to, for the life of me, remember what her three criteria are. But as I've been, reflected during those 6 months, I said, I still want to be kind of learning and growing. So I want to do things where I'm going to still learn something new or, gain something out of it myself. The second one was I want to do something that's fun or I'm passionate about. And the last thing has been I want to feel like what I'm doing is somehow either paying it back or paying it forward, however you want to look at it, where I can take the fact that I had some amazing experiences and opportunities in my career and I learned a ton. And how do I use that to maybe help a small business? And so I've put all of the things that have kind of come at me, whether it's, hey, we have a chief accounting officer role. Are you interested in kind of doing that again? Consulting stuff, nonprofit stuff, all of it through that lens, which I have to say, think of it as a portfolio. Like I now have a
Mm.
portfolio of things I'm doing where I'm doing some angel investing. I'm doing some consulting for small businesses. I'm on some non-for-profit boards and really getting some satisfaction out of that. And my husband and I have started a couple of little small business ventures ourselves. So when I put all that together, it fits through all of those criteria. It checks all those boxes. And I have to say that with that in mind, like the kind of my ego being, hit a little bit was short lived because I figured out that this is what's going to give me purpose in the next phase. And if I feed all of those, then I'm in a good spot.
I love how intentionally you plan this out. And it seems to be a theme throughout your life. Like you're like, hey, I want that job. How am I gonna do that? Like,
Maybe it's being the oldest born type A personality. Shocker. I became an accountant.
I totally get it. And I love that. And it's like you retired and intentionally said, this is how I'm gonna leave it. And then now I'm seeing that you're intentionally setting up with what I'm gonna call your three pillars or three criterias of growth, passion, and pay back or pay forward. So I love that. It sounds like you're absolutely in the right place
Yeah.
with the angel consulting nonprofit. You thinking at all about doing for-profit boards? Is that in the roadmap?
I would like to. I would say that's probably been one of the things that's been most challenging about retirement and not having been at a CEO or CFO kind of level. I've done a fair amount of work kind of in the first 12 months of retirement to reach back out to a network, establish a stronger network if I needed it in areas, using search firms and things like that. Hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen. But I also kind of, with everything else on my plate, I've come to terms with the fact that, like, it doesn't define me for the future. Like, if it happens, I would love it. I think I could be, a really good financial expert on a board. I'd be more interested, I think, in kind of smaller company, even maybe some private company boards. But I'll keep working it. If it happens, great. If not, I'll play a little more golf and I'll be just as happy.
I'm a big believer, and this is where I'm gonna get on my little soapbox. Probably get in trouble for it. But I'm a big believer we need more women and minorities on boards. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
We need it to reflect America, if it's American based or
Yep.
the demographics of the world, let's say. So I wish you luck on that.
Thank you.
Couple more questions and then we'll wrap
Sure.
up. What is one thing that maybe at the time you wished had happened differently, but when it happened, maybe it seemed like kind of bad. It seemed like this wasn't the way it was, but then turned out to be this amazing surprise or something that took you into somewhere where a territory you didn't know you were supposed to go. But when you reflect on it backwards, you're like, oh, that was supposed to happen to me.
I think I could talk a little bit from a little bit of a personal, okay, said I was type A, oldest born type A accountant. So kind of gives you a little bit about how my personality is.
I might understand that.
But, when my kids were really young, I found myself going through a divorce from a personal perspective. And that type A personality took a pretty big hit in, like, I'm not the type of person that fails at things. How did this not, work out in the end? All for the best. But I think while I was balancing kind of being a single mom with kids and a career, I developed a lot in the way of like empathetic leadership. And hopefully, the folks that have worked for me, especially the women that have worked for me and have tried to balance family, careers, and this concept of having it all, but still somehow also attaining balance. And hopefully, I've been able to kind of give them the grace and flexibility to navigate their careers in a way that worked for them, because that's what I was very thankful that I was allowed a bit of a period to, like, look, I gotta drop kids off in the morning. I'm not going to be in the office till 9 every day, and I got to be out of here at 5:30 to pick up, because it was only me for a period of time. And how does all that relate to what other people go through? Even in this day and age, thank God, it swings the other way too, in that I had a lot of men that worked for me who they were the ones that are like, "Look, I'm on pickup duty. I'm on drop-off duty. My wife has a career that is much more intense than mine, and we've made this choice." And I think, hopefully, like I said, that was something that kinda really shaped a little bit of kinda that empathetic leadership that I tried to utilize throughout my career, knowing a lot of us really need it at different times in our lives.
Yeah, that's also really interesting because I've interviewed so many women, they almost all of them bring up that empathetic leadership.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you've dialed it back and realized that going through that period in time in your life, you're going through the divorce, it's stressful, you get something good out of it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, I call my divorce the liberation. Just sounds so much better, doesn't it? Like, I got
Yes.
liberated. The journey
Yes.
to get liberated was not fun.
Exactly. Exactly.
But that you're able to find the good, like, I think that's speaks to yourself, your authenticity, your leadership style of saying, "Hey, you know what? Sometimes you're gonna have a bad go of it."
Oh, yeah.
Like, if life doesn't have a bad go, it'd be kind of boring, wouldn't it?
It would, and I think people are sometimes afraid to talk about it at work, right? Like this whole, "Can I bring my whole self to work, and what does that mean?" We used to always have very interesting discussions of what it meant at work to bring your whole self, but for me, it always meant that. It's like, look, it means if I'm struggling at home and I need somebody to talk to because it might also affect my performance at work, having someone that they could talk to and feel safe that,
Yeah.
hey, this isn't a performance review. This is about how we're gonna make it work for the time period that we need to make it work, so that you can feel like you can show up at home and show up at work, at least, even if it's not at the top of each every day, it's somewhat balanced over time.
I think that's also one of the few benefits, I mean, there's some benefits that COVID brought us, right? Is that we all suddenly had to find this empathy, like, all these people are dealing with kids at school, at
Yeah.
homeschool, you're like, "Ah." I love the video of the guy that's on a TV interview and the kids are running, like, behind him, it's like, I think maybe that's what the universe needed.
It needed a little bit of maybe of a reset on what's really important, right? Like, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I always my bosses might not have liked me saying it, but I always would say, like, "Look, we're gonna sell hamburgers tomorrow. Like, we are going to sell hamburgers tomorrow. That's not gonna stop if we need to have a pause, and we're not gonna get this report done because, somebody's got in a crisis at home, or, whatever it might be. Someone needs to take a leave of absence and we need to shift work around. We will figure it out because we will still sell hamburgers tomorrow."
I love that. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing place to end. Catherine, I love your journey. I'm super excited for your future
Thank you. I am too.
because, I think one of the things that I think is a little bit different in the generations coming up now and what we went through is, and I'm sensing it from you, is when we were coming up, there weren't a lot of women at the top.
No, and if there were, and again, it's okay, but if they were, I didn't see them as role models because their husbands didn't work or they weren't married and didn't have kids. So there weren't a whole lot of people who were, I'll say, trying to do a little bit more than just focus on their career.
Yeah. Well, and I think being a woman in finance and tech, I felt like it was like move over, there's one seat.
Yeah,
Right? I
exactly.
might have been guilty with my big shoulder pads and my,
Yeah,
but now I love that, the spirit of paying it forward or paying it back that you brought into this conversation and
yeah.
helping those along the way, and say, hey, this worked for me, this didn't work for me. Here, let's see what works for you, right?
And I'll say you bring up a point, and just if you look back early in my career, it's exactly as you just described. When I look at the most recent, like probably 7-ish years, 10 years, I have a lot of my own icons to kind of thank who were advocating for women on leadership teams and were role models in terms of they weren't just someone you could look to from afar, but they got dirty and rolled their sleeves up and said, when you have a question on how do you make it work, what are the tools you use in your family to make it work? How do you help advocate for people? How do you help mentor people? Those are the icons that I'm lucky to have at least gotten to work alongside and learn from myself over the kind of last years of my career.
Well, Catherine, this conversation has shown me why you were an FEI icon. I honor you, I appreciate you, and thank you for being a part of this. Any last words for our audience?
No, this was a lot of fun. I'm here, I'm available, I'm on LinkedIn as wanting to even talk to someone outside of their company or outside of even their industry. I have a little more free time on my hands than I had in the past, so always open to interesting conversations and meeting new people. So I really appreciated it.
Thank you for joining us. Catherine, thank you for such an honest and practical conversation. If you're listening and took notes, I don't blame you. I did too. Catherine gave us a full playbook. Set an aspiration early. Let the detours build range and stay comfortable being uncomfortable. She also offers a clear lens for the next phase of life. Keep learning. Do what's fun or meaningful and find ways to pay it forward. And I'm still smiling at the reminder that puts pressure in its place. We're going to sell hamburgers today. So take care of your people, lead with empathy, and build a culture where humans can be human. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other finance leaders who are navigating growth, transformation, and what's up next. Thanks for listening to the FEI Icons podcast. I'm Heather Cole. We'll see you next time.
Your career doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in rooms, relationships, and real conversations. So here's your next move. Expand your network through the FEI network because the right connections increase your net worth and your impact. Plug into the programs, the people, and the community, and keep showing up until opportunity recognizes your name.